for WranglerForum.com. Today I'm going to be installing some of these parts from these guys on this Jeep. Let's get started. So up here on the hood of the Jeep I have an outer stub shaft and an inner shaft, and then down here a new U-joint. You probably guessed at this point we're going to go ahead and swap these out with what's currently on the Jeep. Now what makes these different is that these are chromoly axle shafts. And what that means is that these are going to be a stronger material than the stock shafts. So if you're running larger tires, if you're locked, these are going to give you a lot more peace of mind against breakage than the stock shafts will. Now, the first thing we need to do is get this U-joint into these axle shafts. So let's get started on that. So down here I have everything we're going to need. Of course, the inner and outer axle shafts over here, our U-joint, I've got a hammer to tap in the caps, and I've also got a curved file. Now the reason I have the curved file is pretty simple. After the manufacturing process, you can still have a little bit of, little high spots or some slag that's still on these. So what I like to do is just very gently go over a couple areas, making sure there's nothing there that's going to get in the way of the cap going in. Again, the curved file can go in here, and very lightly, again, you're just trying to get anything that might still be there. Make it a smooth transition for when you take the caps and put them in there. Now how this works is you're going to take the cap off. Set those aside over there. There are roller bearings in there. Make sure they're all in the proper position before you tap them back in. And essentially, you're going to put this in here like this cross just like that, and then you're going to go ahead and tap the caps in from the top. Now, I'll get down on the floor where we have a harder surface to do that, but this is probably one of the most common trail repairs I've seen over the years. A U-joint goes bad, you need to pull the axle shaft out and replace it. If you've never done one of these before, I suggest trying it at home first versus on the trail. Much better conditions at home in case something goes wrong or you need help. So let me go ahead and move down to the floor and we'll go ahead and install the U-joint. So here I've already installed the U-joint in the outer stub shaft, but before I show you how to tap the caps in, I wanted to point out a few things in the process to you. Up first, let's go ahead and look at the cap, and you can see in here the little roller bearings or needle bearings in there. You want to make sure those are all in the proper location before you start this process. Also, on the outside of the cap, you'll see this little groove right here. This is very important because the C-clip, this guy right here, which looks like a letter C if you turn it properly, fits inside of that groove on each side. Okay, so you basically, when you're tapping your caps in, you want to go ahead and tap them down until you see that little groove right there. And that groove prevents everything from pulling out of the yoke. So up next, let me show you ahead and how to properly tap in the caps. So right here, we're going to put the cap in the bottom of the yoke. Make sure it's even. Make sure your roller bearings, as I mentioned, are in good condition. And then put the cross in, seating it fully into the needle bearings below. And then you're going to take a hammer and just tap the outside of the shaft like this. And you want to watch to make sure that when the groove for the C-clip comes up, you stop pushing it in, or tapping it in rather. And then you'll repeat and do the other side the exact same way. So here I am getting ready to install the other cap. Gone ahead and lined it up, make sure the roller bearings are good. And again, the same procedure, just going to tap it in. And again, if you had a press or U-joint install tool, this would certainly be easier than using a hammer. But chances are, if you're on the trail and have to change one of these out, you're just going to have a hammer. And it works fine. Not a problem at all to do this. And again, just tapping every so often and then checking to see where that slot is for the C-clip. And that's really all there is to this. Now, should you find that you still need to expose the groove a little bit more, then you can go ahead and use a socket to go ahead and tap the cap in a little bit more. Again, smaller taps, then check every once in a while to make sure it's lined up. So all we have to do at this point then is put these up in here, put our other caps on, and we will be set to install and swap this out for the stock shaft. At this point I've got the U-joint in both of the shafts. Everything is turning smoothly as it should by the motion. If these were too tight, what you can do is take your hammer, again, and tap here on both sides, and that will set those bearings up for you, so it should loosen it up quite considerably if it's too tight. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and swap out to the new shafts. Well, as you can see, I've got the tire out of the way already in preparation for getting the stock shaft out. And there's really just a few subcomponents we need to remove in order to make that happen. Very basically, we're going to get rid of the caliper. We're going to go ahead and get rid of the rotor. We'll go ahead and undo this hub nut here in the front. There's 3 bolts on the back side, and then that will allow us to take the hub and the axle shaft out. We'll then put the new one in and then reassemble everything. So let's get started. One of the first things I like to do is get the hub nut loose. And to aid in that, I'll put a screwdriver back in here in one of the slots for the rotor. And it's just a simple matter of getting a little force on there, and then remove it. For the caliper bolts, there are two that hold on it to the outer steering knuckle. It is sometimes helpful to use a pry bar and to get down on those because they just need to be a little bit tougher in there. And if you notice, I've also gone ahead up here and had to slightly move the ABS sensor wire. Once you get them going, you're good, and you can go ahead and get rid of the pry bar after that. And then, of course, probably don't even need, come out pretty much on their own. Alright, that one's out. Set the bolt aside. And then what you want to do is, you should be able to pull the caliper off at this point. And then you'll want to hang it somewhere because you don't want to have it in the way. Use a zip tie, of course, make it a little easier. At this point, I've got the caliper secured over here with a zip tie to the sway bar arm. And then we're going to go ahead and get ready to remove the hub. Now there's 3 bolts on the back side. There's one down here, one up at the top, and then one on the far side you can't see. Once we get those out, the hub will come out, although it usually can be in there stuck a little bit of time, sometimes needs some motivation, but I'll show you a trick to get that out. So as I said, there's 3 bolts. We're going to start with this bottom one here. Sometimes you need to go ahead and move the axle shaft and rotate it so you can get your wrench in there. Sometimes you need to go ahead and use a box end. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of a pry bar to help me get started. It sometimes makes some noise. In this case, that one's kind of good. Whoop! When we don't hit the camera, it works a lot better. And then you can go ahead and loosen it up just a little bit. And then you can move on to your next one. So once you've reached this point, you've got the hub nut removed up here. You've got your backside bolts pushed back. There are several ways to go ahead and get the hub off. Sometimes it will come out, sometimes it's stuck in there just due to force. You can go ahead and move out the backside bolts a little bit and hit them with a rubber mallet, which then will force it out. You can try tapping on this outer part if you want, again with a rubber mallet, or you can go ahead and use the socket method, and you'd need to turn the steering wheel, place the socket between here and here, and then when you turn the wheel back, it will pop the hub out. Whichever one of those you find works best for you, you can do. So at this point, I've got the backside bolts off. You can see it's pulled away, and it should just come off. Now you want to be careful because you still have this ABS sensor wire attached. I'm going to slide everything around over there, like that for right now. And then again, using another zip tie, you can go ahead and secure that. With everything out of the way, we're going to go ahead and carefully remove the shaft using 2 hands. And this is important to note, this little spacer, you're going to want to go ahead and take that off. It's going to help you line up the new shaft when you go to put it in. I'm going to set this one down. Good time to take a note of what's going on inside. Get any dirt, anything out there. I usually go ahead and actually vacuum out the tube just to make sure everything's good. Make sure everything's clear on the shaft, and then gently get it in. And these are pretty tight tolerances in one. Got the axle shaft in. I had to play with it a little bit here. Sometimes you have to do that. Before I go ahead and put the hub back in, I do want to take, normally use anti-seize, but don't have any around right now. So it's going to put a little bit of grease in a few spots here, and it might aid the next time we have to take this out, either for maintenance or hopefully not a broken U-joint. That should help a little bit in there. And then we'll begin to take everything and put it all back together. So on the caliper mounting bolts, you're going to torque these to 120 foot-pounds. Just doing a final check, make sure these are good here. Yep. And then the bottom one. Yep, good there. So all that's left at this point is to go ahead and put the ABS wires back in their slots. One there. here as well. Alright, good. And get our screwdriver back in here. I don't think I have the torque wrench set at 100 yet, so let me do that real quick. And you notice a difference if you're familiar with the old TJs, ZJs, XJs. There used to be a cotter pin in here, and this had a lot more force on it. JK, they changed that design around a little bit. Kind of interesting to see that change. It's obviously been around for a few years. Alright, there's 100 right there. And to change that out, this is a 30, what is this, 36? Yeah, 36 millimeter. I'll go ahead and take that to 100. Alright, we are set. Go ahead and make sure everything spins okay. Doesn't sound like anything is rubbing or contacting. Good on the back side as well. Put the tire back on and we'll be set. As you can see, got the tire back on without a problem, and then to celebrate this installation, went on a trail run. Got the Jeep a little dirty and some rocks and mud, but had an overall great time and no problems with the new shafts on that run. So the question comes up, how much stronger are these than the stock shaft? A lot of factors go into that. The first thing is an unknown. I don't know the material makeup of the stock shaft, so it's hard for me to go ahead and give an exact scientific answer to this. However, from what I found online, it looks like the new alloy shafts could be up to just under 50% stronger than a stock shaft. It really depends on the material, and there's about 3 to 4 different base carbon steels a stock shaft could be made from. So as you go up in strength on those stock base materials, that 50% number that I was talking about kind of goes down a little bit. Do your own research, determine what you can find on that. But overall, a definite significant improvement over a stock shaft. The other nice thing about this upgrade is you can take that stock shaft, throw it in the back of your Jeep, and you've got a set of trail spares. That's a great thing to do. Anyway, I hope I've given you all a good idea of what's involved in this installation. It's not too difficult. Certainly something you can do at home. And definitely, if you don't know how to change out a U-joint, definitely take the time to learn how to do that. Again, it is the most common trail failure out there I've seen over the years of doing this. Really good to know that knowledge and to be able to help yourself and help others on the trail. So anyway, guys, hope you have a great day. Hope to see you on the trail soon, and we'll see you next time.